Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making this Moonlight Sonata bracelet, necklace, earring design. You can take it and make it what you want. This is the featured video for our November Best Box. If you're interested in checking that out, click on the links below to shop with us online. Gather up your materials and let's get started. To begin the first component of the bracelet, we're going to be using crescent beads. And I have a grouping here of my crescent beads, and in between each crescent, I have on .006 wildfire beading thread in the white color, a size 12 needle. I've picked up 6 of my crescents with a 15-0 Toho silver lined crystal bead in between each bead. I'm going to let this drop down to about 5 feet of my beading thread. That way I can use it for other designs. From here, I'm going to tie this into a knot. What's going to happen then is it's going to come inside itself almost like a melon. Go ahead and tie another knot, making sure that you don't have any seed beads in that initial knot. From here, we're going to turn all the crescents to make sure that they're facing in and that the points are all to the top. We're going to step from one hole to another hole of the crescent bead. To do so, we have that knot there. I want to go through my next crescent bead, and when I come out my next crescent bead, I'm going to go from this left-hand hole to the right-hand hole. I'm going to string now the whole way through the open hole of the crescents to create that little melon shape, adding a 15-0 seed bead, and then sewing through the next of the crescents in line. You're going to continue the whole way around this circle until you have all 6 of the crescents so they're sitting in that nice rounded ball shape and form. Coming out of that circle then, as you go in and add your last 15, I want you to sew through the crescent, the first 15 you added in this second hole, and then another crescent. So you want your thread to be coming out one of your crescent beads. What we're going to do now is really complete that melon look and give a little shine by adding in sides that we're going to link on then to our design. To do so, I want you to pick up 9 of your seed beads. So there's 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then you're going to sew into that same crescent from the other side. So you're coming out the left right there, you add 9 of your crystal beads, and you're going to sew into the crescent, then through to the next 15, and onto the next crescent. Once you pull that nice and tight, it just basically hangs out there looking like a little loop on top. From here now, what we're going to do is we are going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 15-0 seed beads. I want you to pick up 4 seed beads from the previous loop that you made. So count down 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to sew down through those 4 beads that were on the left of that little petal that we made. Give a nice tight pull, and that rounds out our next piece. Go ahead and sew through then the crescent that your thread was just coming out of. Pull it nice and tight to get rid of any extra thread. Sew through the 15 and the crescent right after. Again, coming out the next crescent, we're going to continue picking up 5 beads, and we're going to do this to both the top and the bottom of this section. Once you have those 5 beads in your hand, you're going to count over and up 1, 2, 3, 4 on that row of your what is 9 seed beads in total. So down through those 4 beads there, adding the 5 around the top, and that creates your little section here. What we're going to end up with is 6 beads that sit on the top. They would be bead number 5 in our groupings that we're doing. And I'm going to continue going around the design here, adding in to the top of the crescents, adding in 5 beads, and then sewing back down 4 and back through the crescent bead. When you get back around to the last free open crescent, I brought the camera in so you could see nice and close. I'm coming out of the previous crescent that I just made that loop for. We're going to go up through our 4 seed beads, 1, 2, 3, and 4. we need to add 1 seed bead for the top there. After you add that 1 seed bead for the top, go ahead and sew down through 4 beads from the first loop that we made. What that's going to do is close in our little pumpkin gourd here with all of our moon-shaped crescent beads. From here, I want you to sew through the next crescent, up through those 4 beads that sit at the top. And now to close off the top of the crescent to make it nice and tight, we're going to sew through each one of those top 5 beads. So you're sewing through 1 bead, catching the next bead that sits at the top, and then another bead, and another one, till you have 5 total. So going around, when you look at your beads, you should have 9 beads sitting above each one of your crescents. Some of those beads are going to be shared with the crescent next to it. You should only have 1 row of seed beads between each one of your crescents as you go towards the top. Going through the top now, I strung through all 6 of the beads, 6 total, that sit at the top of those loops of the crescents. That pulls that nice and tightly closed, and then we're going to go in and we're going to add a little bit of beads to that look. You can do this with bicones, you can do it with rounds, you can do it with rondelles, but whatever you choose to do it, or you can go right into your ring as well, or your wire guard. If you want to put beads on, what you need to do is balance it out. To balance it out, I'm coming out of what I'll call bead number 1. I'm going to skip over beads number 2 and number 3. I'm going to add one of my 4mm beads here, or my rondelles, sorry. Going through the rondelle, then coming out the top, I'm going to add a series of 7 seed beads to make a little loop. Once those 7 seed beads are in, I'm going to sew down through the rondelle. And keep in mind, this can be a nice cute earring as well. And then again, go over to that bead that sits directly across from the bead that you're coming out of and sew through that bead. So I'm coming out here on bead number 1, I skip over bead number 2, 3, and I'm sewing through 4 from the right towards the left. To center it out one more time and reinforce that edge, I'm going to go back up through that rondelle, back through all my seed beads, back through, and down through that rondelle again. When I come down through the rondelle, you're going to look at your starter side. You can usually kind of bend it down a little bit to the side. You're going to go back to bead number 1 that your thread was coming out of. And once you're back to bead number 1, you're going to sew in from the opposite direction. So if your thread originally was coming out the left, you're going to sew in to the right-hand side. Make sure that thread goes underneath the bead, and that brings that little cap right to center. We're going to go down through some of the seed beads now on the side here, and we're going to step down and do the exact same thing on the other side, adding in our seed beads as our decoration here, and then also coming out. Whether or not you add 2 seed beads before the little rondelle, that's up to you. I wanted the rondelle to sit a little bit closer in the design as I go in and create and keep going while I'm making my little kind of crescent moon-shaped beads. Once you're done doing the other side of the piece, and what you're going to do for that is just step over, just like we did previously, go over and start your little loops around your crescent beads, and sew back through, again, those 6 beads in the center. When you're coming out through one of those center beads there, you're going to consider that bead number 1. Go ahead then and pick up your rondelle to act as a little bead cap. Add on your 7/15s that sit on top. And once you have those 7/15s on, or if you want to, you can use your wire guards or wire protectors. You're going to go back down through that rondelle, skip over beads 2 and 3, catch on to bead number 4, which sits directly across from it. Sew through bead number 4 there. Then to center the rondelle on top of the project, you're going to go back through the rondelle, back through all the seed beads, and then when you come out through the rondelle, you're going to go back to that bead number 1. If you came out the top of bead number 1, you're going to go into the bottom, or the right and the left. You want to make sure what that does is that brings that rondelle back to center, so you have kind of your little dumbbell there that it sits evenly on each side and looks like it's coming out directly from the middle. In Anna's original design, she added 2 seed beads right before the rondelle and then went back down through the rondelle. I did it nice and tight. You can do either way to get your first component that works to get your sides that are going to connect then this little kind of crescent-y shape 4-pronged bicone. For our next portion of bead here, we are going to do the next connector. And interestingly enough, if you look at my earrings here, the connector is also the center of the earrings. So there's a lot of variation and a lot of ideas that you can take from this project to kind of, again, make it your own. On a new piece of thread, I burned down the thread ends on that one. I have 4 of my 4mm bicones, separated out by a 15-0 in that Toho silver-lined crystal again. I'm going to take my needle and thread back through my first 15 bicone, and I have that stop bead on there so that this will round out to a nice little diamond. From here, we're going to do the same thing we did, interestingly enough, for the crescent. Look how different it looks when we do it towards the center of the bead. To do so, we are going to be picking up 5 of our 15-0 seed beads, adding them to the needle, and we're going to circle around back through that same bicone that our thread is coming out of. Those 5 beads you want to kind of push towards the center of the design. Go back up through the first 2 beads that you added, add 3 more beads, and then again back through that same bicone. Back up through the 2 beads that sit on the side, just like we did with the crescent. In the crescent we went up 4, this one we're going up 2. You're going to go through bead number 3, which is the first bead that you just added, and now add again 3 more beads. When you add 3 more beads, you go over to your next bicone, sew through the bicone from the far end towards the closer end. So back up now through, there's first 2 beads that sit on the side. And what you'll start to notice is, as you're doing this, you'll see 2 strands of thread going through those little side beads, one on either side of the 15-0 seed bead, just like the crescent. After the 2 beads, you're going to sew through bead number 1 from those 3 that you just added. Because we're down here on the side of our last one, I want you to sew down through the next 2 beads as well, through the bicone, up through the first 2 beads that you added on the original bicone. Add 1 more of your 11-0 seed beads, or your 15-0 seed beads rather, and then you're going to catch the center. Just like we did when we sewed through the 6 at the top of the crescent, you're going to sew through the 4 seed beads that sit at the peaks. So there's bead number 1 and 2 that I sewed through. There's bead number 3. And here's bead number 4. So it almost looks like a little package. Going in there, I'm going to sew back through bead number 1. And then I'm going to sew down through the 2 15-0s that sit on the side of that bicone. Once I'm out those 2 15-0s there, I want you to bring your thread and needle through the bicone below, as well as through the 15 that sits beside the bicone. Coming out the 15 that sits beside the bicone, I want you to add 8 more 15s and sew through the next 15 between the next bicone. So we're catching all of those 15s that we originally added to space out the original 4 bicones. 8 more beads go on, and you're going to do this a series of 4 times rather. Once you have your 8 on, You're going to hop over to the next 15 that sits between the bicones and sew through it. And this gets that nice kind of arabesque look to it as you round out the edges of the bicones. If you want to do this with a rounded bead, you can also do it with a rounded bead or even a crystal bicone. As I go around there then and add my little series of 8 beads, you want to push that stop bead down to the bottom so you're not tempted to sew through it. Sew through the next 15. And as you see now, I have one more side. Once I add my final 8 beads, I can either, if I want to, put them on ear wires like I have the earrings that I'm wearing. I can put wire guards on it like I'm going to show you how to do. That way we can attach it to our little moons that we created with the crescent beads. There I have my little rounded out little bead section there. What I want you to do is get to one of the tops of your beads. To get to the top, go ahead and sew up through beads 1, 2, 3, and come on out. Remember, we had 8 total. We're out the first 3 beads. We're going to add a wire guard, go up through the wire guard, down through the wire guard on the other side, skip over the middle 2 beads, and then sew down through the next 3. If you want to do an earring, nice and simple, this is your chance to go ahead and just make one nice and easy. From here, I'm going to go over to the other side and add a wire guard as well. Before I get too far, I do want to show you if you want to do a variety of adding the wire guard or the seed beads, you can do either. If you want to add the seed beads into the wire guard, you need to make sure, I'm going to sew back out through these 3 beads here. You're going to go ahead, when the wire guard is on like this, sew through the loop that you made on your moon bead. Push that loop into the wire guard so it sits inside of it, and then sew down through those 3 beads on the opposite side. That'll pull that right in and link it together for your necklace, your bracelet, or even for a sweet little pair of earrings like this. When I go through then to get the next bead, I'm going to circle around the outside beads here to get to the other side, going through the 15 then that sits between my bicones, through the bicone, through the 15 that sits on the other side, and then again up through the first 3 seed beads on my outer arch of this bead here. From here, once again, add your wire guard. And if you have your clasp, what you're going to do with your wire guard is you're going to go in and attach that now. So if you pull out your clasp, you have a nice little push clasp. Take that out of the packaging. Go ahead and put it onto your wire guard. Run your thread and needle down through the clasp, down through the other side of the wire guard, and then down through the last 3 beads. Once you're out here, you can take your stop bead off, tie off your thread ends, and then continue on adding on however many components you want to make this into a necklace, a bracelet, an anklet, or even a couple pairs of earrings. So whether or not you make your Moonlight Sonata into a bracelet like I have here, a pair of earrings, or even some components along a longer necklace, using some more of your rondelles as well as your bicones that you have extra, you'll learn a ton during the process of making both of these similar netted designs for both your moon and your little crescent shape as well. You can have fun creating all different things, even including some things from past boxes if you want to take a look at some of those designs. Thanks so much for joining me in making this Moonlight Sonata bracelet design. Whether or not you take the components and use them individually, create them as a necklace, a bracelet, or even a set of earrings, you're bound to learn a ton from the different design elements that are included in this month's box. Thanks to Anna for the design idea. And remember, if you do want to check out the Best Bead Box, make sure to check the links below to shop with us online and check out our subscriptions. In addition to that, give a little thumbs up as well as comment below with your ideas, your suggestions, any questions that you may have, and things to help the beading community become better beaders. As always, thanks for joining me and have fun with your components of your Moonlight Sonata.